Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. And I'd like to see everyone who is here as well. If you can, I'm going to go ahead and type it into the chat. Go ahead and share your name, the grade span you work with, or your role. So get grade or role, whichever fits best. And I want to hear about your favorite fast food restaurant. I know, my kids, whenever I ask, where are we going to go eat? They always say Chick-fil-A. So that would be an example of just something quick and easy. So go ahead and open up your chat and respond with your name, grade, or role, and your favorite fast food. And then just go ahead and meet everyone in there. Excellent. Welcome, Peggy. Chick-fil-A, Beautiful. Welcome, Delphina. And pho is your favorite? That is good. Trudy, welcome. Thank you for sharing. Thai food. Welcome, Winnie. I love that high school's here today. I see Alma's at Chipotle and teaching professor at NAU. Welcome. And she loves seafood. Winnie also loves seafood. And Alexandra's Panda and is an English teacher. Beautiful. And ELD specialist, right? We wear so many hats. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for being here. I know you have already had a long day, so bye. But I do want to thank you for being here. And the reason I asked you about fast food, if you noticed, every single answer was very specific. No one said Cheesecake Factory, because when we go to those places, they bring out a book, right? A textbook of food to have to look through. And the ones that we gave were very specific. So I've been reading a lot about, neuromarketing and why most places are starting to be more specific so they can be more efficient. And so I started researching neuroeducation so that we can look at our brain. Our brain is lazy. And so it actually builds patterns so that it can lower its cognitive load and be able to have room to keep thinking. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, right? We're going to be looking at how can we plan lessons focusing on what is most effective for our students to ensure that our planning time is meaningful, rigorous, and also necessary, right? Not just for our students, but for ourselves. So I'd like to invite you today to not just focus on your students, but to focus on you. Because if we are able to do things with more effectiveness and more efficiency, guess what? Then our students can. But we can't expect them to do it if we're overworked and overwhelmed. And so the way I do my presentations is we don't have a PowerPoint. I use the handout. So I'm going to go ahead and share it in the chat so you all have your copy. And just so that you have a copy and you save it somewhere. But everything that I'm sharing is in this guide. So if you're looking at the screen, you don't have to have your guide open because I'm going through the pages. But there's also going to be extra words in the guide that I'm not going to read it all to you because I know you're all, specialists in reading. And so as I go through, I might be moving a little quick, but I want you to know that you have all of the same information in this guide. And so I want to start off with a quote from the SIOP model. By creating consistent and predictable instructional routines, teachers help students develop learning habits that can generalize across content areas and contexts. That's what we want to do, right? Just like some of you gave examples of like Chipotle and Chick-fil-A. They've honed in so that they could be better at what they're doing. And then we tend to choose those because our brain has to do less work when we go there. And the same happens in the classroom. When we have instructional routines and we've taught those to our students, then they are the ones who own the class. Many of us, I just saw Gloria join in. She was actually my first coach when I started teaching. And she would show us routines that when we would put those routines in place, When I was absent, guess what? The students knew what to do and they would help the sub. Why don't we do that with teaching as well? And that's what this goal of today is to be able to plan in a way that is predictable, not just for our students, but for us and our colleagues. And so what you can expect to get out of today's lesson is, or session, is to go ahead and look at, first we're going to look at what does it take to plan for our students who are learning languages, not just our EL students, but dual language students. And if you're an ELD teacher and you teach English, those students are still developing academic English, which is different than the lexicon they use every day. And then we're going to go into lesson planning, the purpose, and shifting our idea of what that purpose is. And then I'm going to introduce to you a framework that's going to help us plan lessons at grade level. And then we're going to look at the task sequence. If we're planning at grade level, how do we know we're grading at grade level? How do we know what we're looking for, regardless of our students' language ability, that they're still developing knowledge at grade level? And then finally, we'll talk about student ownership. And here are how we're going to get there. So we have the skills you're going to be working on, the knowledge we'll be focusing on, and the strategy. So those of us who like sentences, I just like to break up these, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this throughout. But if you see right here, I'm going to go just through and use this sentence frame to write our objectives. So our first objective for today is that I will use features of lesson preparation from the SIOP model. Oh, bounced me out. There we go. Lesson preparation by writing a lesson plan. And I'll tell you right now, but you're going to love writing this lesson plan. It's going to take you less than 5 minutes. And then I will discuss features of lesson preparation by sharing in a round robin. So if you notice already, when it comes to our objectives, you're going to be writing. So that means you're writing and reading, because those go hand in hand. And those usually are dominant in the left side of our brain. But then you're going to discuss, and I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and you might not feel comfortable turning on your camera and your mic. And that's okay, because that's how our students feel when they're in front of us. So I want us to work through that, be able to work with new people on something new and push through that, because when we experience that, then we build more empathy and understanding for where our students are. And then you'll be listening and speaking in that breakout room through a round robin. And I'll keep sharing what those are. So let's go ahead and go to what you know. You can go ahead and turn on your mic and share, or you can type it into the chat. So go ahead and think about it. What are the types of things that teachers need when we are planning for language learners? Go ahead and type it in the chat, or come off your mic and you can just share one idea. You know the best thing about language teachers? We have great wait time. Okay, so we need to design content and language objectives of the big idea. Love that language. We need to understand the language. Necessary, right? We need information about audience. What else do we need? What are the things that when we lesson plan that we just say, I really wish I had? Yep, we need to look at form and function of language. We do have another session on the difference between that. And we need to know the standards, right? Because we want to make sure that we're looking at grade level for our students. All students deserve access to grade level learning. And what resources we have. And scaffolds, I love that word. Proficiency. Does anyone ever think they need more time? Yes, right, I see. I see Trudy saying yes, yes, time, time, time. And then you get a new principal and there's a new format, right? So teachers need time. We need to be able to make those connections. Yesterday, I was listening to a podcast and he made a really interesting connection about are we collecting dots or are we connecting dots? And when we listed all of this information here, these are a lot of dots that we collect to write a lesson plan. But are we truly connecting them for us and our students? A lot of AI is popping up is, oh, we can write a lesson plan for you. Again, that's collecting the dots. How do we connect the dots for the people who are being engaged in that learning and teaching process? And to do that, what do we need to know about our students? What do our students need from an effective lesson to access grade level learning? Go ahead, you guys are doing a great job in the chat. Go ahead and answer that one. Okay, it needs to be relevant to their life and their experiences. Expectations, right? How do they know when they meet or exceed? I love that you went high. They need time to process content. They need to know the intentions and success criteria. They need an opportunity to practice. And when we're working with English learners, they need to be able to practice twirls, which is the thinking, the writing, the reading, the listening, and the speaking. And so today in the lesson plan that we're going to develop, every single student that you were to share that lesson plan with is going to be thinking about grade level standards through writing, reading, listening, and speaking, and having those opportunities. And then we also see that the lesson fits into the scope and practice. Beautiful. So there's a lot that we need on both sides, and we could go on and on and on. And so I do want to go ahead and continue to think about all of those things we need, right? What is the point of a strategy? Okay, so a strategy actually needs to have 3 things for it to be effective. 1, it has to have a name. So think about like when I say graphic organizer, that's a strategy, it has a name. But the second thing it needs to have is procedures that do not change. So now if I say graphic organizer, whoa, there's a lot of different procedures. But if I say Venn diagram, now that's a strategy that has procedures that do not change. And third, when and why to use it, the conditional knowledge. So when I think about a Venn diagram, it has the same procedure. Show me, right? All of you, if you were to say a Venn diagram, you would say 2 interlocking circles. What goes on the outside? Differences. What goes in the same? Similarities. And so when and why do we use it? To compare and contrast. That is why that strategy is so useful across, not only across content areas, but across generations of learners. And so these strategies are especially sensitive for our English learners because it helps them develop language skills. When the students see us modeling a Venn diagram, they're reading and they're seeing us model our thinking of comparing and contrasting. When they are doing their own, they're reading information and writing it. Then the next step is to get them to talk off of their Venn diagram, to listen and speak about the content in it. And so that leads them to become more independent and confident learners. And through those, eventually, will they be able to do a Venn diagram by themselves? Go ahead and show me in the chat or give me a thumbs up. Eventually, will they do it on their own? Sometime in college, they're going to be asked to compare and contrast. They can use a Venn diagram. And that's the retention of content. It's not that they're memorizing content, but they're memorizing how to access new content or make sense of new content in a new way. And if you're familiar with Stephen Covey, you know he's a business guy. He writes for people in business who are going to be more effective and more efficient because for them it means more money. Well, we believe the same for learning, right? Learning is priceless because no one can do it for you, but once you've achieved it, no one can take it from you. And so he says when we form good habits in learning throughout our life, we're able to learn faster and with less effort than someone who has not cultivated those habits. And habits have to be taught and practiced and practiced. And so what does that mean for us as teachers? That's good for students. We're all, yeah, for students. But a lot of times we forget about what we need as teachers. And so when we're thinking about habits as teachers, we really want to think about how do we do something that, how do we change something that's not working? We've talked about scaffolding, and I heard someone write scaffolding earlier. That scaffolding is great for students. Scaffolding is essential for our English learners. Well, why haven't we scaffolded it for us, for teachers? We get so much information and we're not provided those scaffolds. So today's lesson planning is a scaffold for teachers. And scaffolds, I remember Dr. Chavarria was presenting, she's one of the writers of the SIOP model. And she was talking about a scaffold and, and how it supports. And when students don't need the support anymore, we pull them off. And there was an engineer in her group somehow. And he was like, ma'am, actually, that's not what scaffolds are for. She goes, well, tell me. And he goes, when we're building buildings, we use scaffolds because there's nothing in the building. So if we're building on the 4th floor, we need access to the 4th floor. So we use the scaffolds to access those parts that aren't finished yet. And she said, even better, because we use scaffolds to help students access grade level learning when our language isn't there yet. But for teachers, our scaffolds are to provide practice to get our brain thinking in the same way, no matter what we're teaching, so that we can actually create, right, space and bring down our cognitive load and bring down our own affective filter so that we can build more learning. And so scaffolds for us, adults, encourage active learning, critical thinking, and problem solving. We're asked to do that all the time, but without scaffolds. We're asked, to support, and we go and we search for scaffolds because we're not provided them. Another reason scaffolding helps adults is because it allows us to tap into our prior experiences. That's the biggest difference between students and adults, are that we have more experiences, but our brains learn the same. And then we're also motivated because we're connected to our experiences and preferences. And then finally, scaffolding aligns with how the brain learns. So it learns by forming connections, right? Just like a habit, it has to happen over and over again. And so reading about planets isn't a habit, but using a T-chart to answer and ask questions is a habit that they can use in any text. And that ties back to strategies. And so habits make our brains work smarter. And as teachers, we're always looking for ways to work smarter, not harder. But something that I realized just recently, that my why, right? Everybody asks us our why. Oh, because of the students, or because, I'm passionate about it. My why now is I want the freedom to be present. I do not want to be multitasking. I do not want to be pulled in multiple directions. I do not want to disregard someone's feelings because I'm busy. And so through scaffolds like this, we can actually not only save time, but create patterns where we can be more present. And with that, I went ahead and did some work and put some stuff together. And in your handouts, if you notice on all of these, there's lines, and you can click on those and it'll take you to a resource to reinforce, or if you have more questions. And so I recently created the Finita system, and Finita is a word that's actually an Italian word that means end or limits, right? I am tired of not setting boundaries. And so we're expanding limits through Finita by setting boundaries. And so the name Finita, if you want to remember it, there's always a story to something, right? But my grandmother's one was Delfina, and one was Anita. And so when I was thinking of a name, I put it together and said Finita. And so that's where it came from. But then when I looked it up, it actually was meaningful because it was like putting a stop to things when things end and there's a new beginning. And so this is where we're going to scaffold for teachers. So throughout, what we're going to practice next is our two things, the SKS, which stands for skills, knowledge, and strategy. And then the lesson plan phases, which are another acronym for you, but it's impact. And then when we look at SKS, that's how we do our academic and social goals, which would be your content objective and your language objective. Content focuses on writing and reading, social, listening, and speaking. And then we go through the lesson phases, which incorporate the SIOP model, as well as visible learning. And when you click on these, you'll be able to see what those are. If you click on anything that's in here, it'll go ahead and give you resources for that as well. And so while that's a whole lot, let's go ahead and share. What do you guys think about so far? Do you agree that, and you say yes or no in the chat, do you agree that we as teachers could use scaffolds to make our work more effective and efficient? Trudy's right in there. Yes, yes, yes. And it's true. Have you ever, tell me if you know about Orange Theory. Okay, Orange Theory is a small little gym. 24-hour fitness, Lifetime Fitness are those big gyms that have everything, right? They have childcare, they have a pool. Lifetime even has like a salon and you can get massages. They have everything and they're open 24 hours. So you can work out and have a healthy lifestyle. Or there's Orange Theory, which is one little room and it has 3 rotations. You do treadmill, lift weights, and row, and that's it. And you go for 1 hour class. Which one do you think is more effective with getting consistent results? Orange Theory or 24-hour fitness? Right. Thank you for playing, Francesca. Orange Theory, right? It does. And people pay so much more because it's more efficient and it's more effective. They focus on what's essential in an order that's going to be most effective. And so I took that idea and said, okay, we've all learned about the SIOP model. It's like hitting its 25th year, but we still haven't seen it happen, right? And then we've all gone to Kagan training, or if you haven't, I'll go ahead and connect that with you as well, and thinking maps. But we learn all of these types of things that are going to help us in isolation. And yes, I do see that. Gian said, depends on your motivation, right? And what your knowledge is. But if you're not ready for the big gym and you go to Orange Theory, it's going to serve as a scaffold. You're going to build a routine that eventually you're going to stop paying that much and go back to your gym because you can do it on your own. And I've heard a lot of people do that. And what's really exciting is that I hope that what we can do today too, yes, Valerie, it's a good start. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at what's a good start for us to start planning and start being able to see lessons that include things that we've been wanting to include, but no one has shown us how to do it yet. And so we find ourselves overworked. So the SIOP model says that lesson preparation for language learners should include content objectives, language objectives, appropriate age and educational background level, adaptations, meaningful activities where students are doing the reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and the use of supplementary materials. Now, when I come back to appropriate age, really thinking about what equity is for our language learners, especially here in Arizona, it's learn English and then you can learn everything else. True equity for language learners is having access to grade level knowledge. And if we're not providing them access to grade level knowledge, then we're continuously growing that gap. And so these lesson templates are those scaffolds to help us see what are kids doing, is it at grade level, and how can we get better at planning them in chunks so that students will be more successful. And so the 2 strategies we're going to use are skill knowledge strategy, or SKS, and then impact. So, and impact is really, if you use, all lesson plan ideas go back to Madeline Hunter in the 60s, right? We have hook, I do, we do, you do, closure. And she didn't call them that, but it was modeling, guided practice, independent practice, and closure. And so that's what these are built off, but I switched them to align to what the needs of language learners are. So they're going to inquire, so they're going to connect to prior knowledge. We're going to model the expectations. They're going to practice through reading and writing. They're going to affirm their learning through an opportunity to speak and listen. And then we're going to close through connect. And this task sequence at the end is something that we as teachers need to adjust or create so that we know our students are working at grade level. And let's see, you know, we all learn better by doing. So I'm going to go ahead and model first, because I think modeling, especially at 4:30 in the afternoon, is really beneficial to learners, as you are going to be able to do it on your own as well. And so I'm going to show you how to take SKS from a standard. I'm trying to make it bigger. Oh, that's the wrong one. Is that big enough for you to see? There we go. Okay, so skill is back to, you know, understanding by design. Skills are the verbs. Knowledge is the content. And strategy is the habit that you're going to teach students so that they can do this when they're not with you, right? So we have verbs in here. So we have ask and answer. And then what we want them to do is questions, right? Questions about the text, right? And sometimes I just, you know, about the text. So that's what I'm looking for. And this is a 3rd grade standard, RI1. What strategy would we be able to teach students to use consistently so that they could ask and answer questions about the text? If you have any ideas, go ahead and throw them in the chat, but I already do have one in mind that I'm going to model for you. So I'm stepping out and letting you jump in. Any ideas? How do you get kids to ask and answer questions? And maybe that's why we're doing this, right? Because a lot of times we'll get here and then we'll show them how to do it, but it's not necessarily a strategy or habit that they can create and use on their own. Yes, beautiful. Thank you, Isabella. Think, pair, share, right? So let's go ahead and put think, pair, share. I'm going to put TPS, think, pair, share. And so think, pair, share. So when students are doing this with a think, pair, share, would that be reading and writing, or would they be listening and speaking? Listening and speaking, right? So what would I have them write? I'm going to put that I would have them write. They have to write first. I have to teach them a framework for them to write. So I'm just going to go with the tree map. Okay. So now when I write my objectives, and I usually put these up like this when I'm teaching young language learners and then they read it. And then later we can put them into sentences. Whoops. Sorry, sensitive mouse. So I can ask, answer questions about the text using a tree map. So that's my content objective. They're going to be reading and writing. Then after they finish their tree map, and think about your students and all their proficiencies that they have, they're going to do their map. For the students who need the most support, we're going to do one together, and I'm going to model, and they're going to copy it first until they start learning. But then the other students, whatever's on their map, they differentiate it based on their ability. And then we're going to go ahead and for the next one, we want them to read and write. And yes, absolutely. I love that. Think, Ink, Share. When we put them in partners so that they can write on their tree map, we could use a Think, Ink, Share, right? But we want them to ink before they speak, because then they're using their writing as their scaffold. And so now they've done their tree map. Now I can share my questions about the text in a Think, Pair, Share. So now look at those two separate objectives. The goals are different. The first one, students are reading and writing. The second one, what are all the students doing? Listening and speaking. About what? Questions from the text. So we got the thinking, the writing, the reading, the listening, and the speaking. And the students are doing this. So if I'm a classroom teacher and say I'm a third grade teacher, could I do this in language arts? What other content areas could I use the same objective for? Any, right? Absolutely. I can even use it in math. So imagine this being a scaffold for teachers who are pushing in or pulling out to do with the students in math. It's simple. And once the students start to learn and do this tree map over and over, guess what? They've lowered their cognitive load and they start reading harder text. They start reading longer text. They start writing more. They start speaking more. But when we tell them to do it different every time, they're trying to figure out what to do, that their affective filter goes up and they can't do it. Now your affective filter's up because this is something new, right? You're like, tree map, what does that look like? So here's an example of a tree map about planets. So they wrote their questions, and then I use sweepers from the SIOP model. They survey the text, they write their questions, they predict first, then they read, and then they respond, and then they revise if they want to revise. And so this is, an example of what it might look like. Here, students are reading and writing. They could still be listening and speaking if they're doing it in partners. That's completely, but the point is that they're reading and they have a writing technique. So let's see you do the lesson plan. So you're going to do a lesson in a few minutes. And what I'd like you to do is, if you have your phone, go ahead and scan. Or we're going to put the link inside the chat. You want to do it on your computer. If you're doing it on your computer, I do want you to read the directions. Once you open it, you're going to select the date, write your email, and select a grade level. You're going to choose the standard. For this one is per day, not per week. I apologize. You're going to write the text, right? So if they're studying, the last example I gave, they're studying planets. Then you're going to do sentence frames to help your students. And then you're going to open your email and you're going to have something. So let me go ahead and model, because adults need modeling too. When you open it, it should look like this, and you can do it on your phone. Just go ahead and select a date, put in your email. Make sure it's good, right? Because you're going to get your lesson plan. And this one is just for 3rd through 5th grade. We do have them for all grades. And then title or text. So the text we're reading is about planets. The text structure, think about how important this is. We don't think about this, but earlier we talked about form and function. We need to think about what we're having kids ask and use books for, and it starts here. And so it's going to be a description. Content standards. These are pulled directly from our language arts standards for reading informational text, which can apply to accessing information from anything. And so we're going to be focusing on questions, and the 1 means that's standard 1. The skill level, We're going to ask and answer questions. The academic strategy we chose was a tree map. And then social strategy was a think, pair, share. And then I want to write sentence frames for what the students are expected to do here. So what is your question? How did you answer it? So that they can help them in think, pair, share. Okay, once you do that, click submit and then check your email. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes to do that. When you're done, let me know in the chat by saying done. Three minutes and we got our first done. Love it. Another done. Thank you. Those dones are starting to come in. Be sure to check your email. Okay, I'll have to go in. Thank you, Alma. Can you open it, Alma?
Sorry, I was muted. No, it's asking for access. And so I'm requesting access, but I wondered if you change the setting, would that help?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. But then I'll go ahead and show you then what you get.
Thank you.
So once you check your email, you'll get an email and it'll tell you what you're up here, what the standard is on. And then it'll tell you what to do. And on the bottom, you'll get, just from checking those, you get this entire email. And then you'll be able to adapt it. And so you can see you have your content and language. I call it academic and social because we have separated content and language so much that we actually are pulling kids out and teaching them language in isolation. And so I call them academic. And so with the academic, students can ask and answer questions by using a tree map and share questions by using a tree map. So all those steps I went to in the SKS, this already does it for you. And then it tells you what your twirls are. What should students be thinking about? Asking and answering. Those are skills that we don't teach enough so that students can use them on their own. Do you know that when we ask a question to someone, that our brain actually stops? It has to stop in order to respond. But when we give people directions and we tell them something, it just goes in and we just keep going with the flow. And so thinking, writing, reading, and listening, what are they going to write on? A tree map. What are they reading about planets and how are they going to speak and listen in a time paired share? And then all you have to do as a teacher is fill out these green parts. What will you ask? Well, we're about planets. We can say, what do you know about planets? And then here, just turn to your partner and discuss. And you can put planets or you can put sentence frames. I remember, you know, blank, I know, blank. And then you can put in the vocabulary. So I put SKS here because we forget to teach this vocabulary. So we forget to teach ask, answer, questions, and then whatever else, you know, planets, solar system, whatever words you want to teach. And then you jump down here and then you ask the students, how did the tree map help you use the text to ask and answer questions? And now you're showing them how the strategy questions. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And that's it. And you're done. Except for all you have to do is model, practice, and answer. And you see how my sentence frames that I put in are there. And then you have to do your task sequence. And that's what we're going to work on next. But I want to hear what you think. What do you think about this? Give me your answers. In the chat or come off your mic. Were you surprised at just answering those few questions that you got a full lesson? What was it?
I think that we usually think of framing a lesson plan by beginning with the objective and then going into the assessment, so beginning and end. But I feel what you did was also scaffold the middle part. That's where we struggle the most, or you know, when we're working with new teachers. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And that was the point, right? Imagine how new teachers could use this and how our language teachers, they're focusing on so many parts that they don't let the students do the work because we don't trust that we're ready to let them do it. And this will help them. And then for right now, because this is a scaffold, all we have are the thinking maps and the Kagan strategies. There's only 8 thinking maps. Imagine that you only have 8 things to choose from. Then there's only 5. There's actually an article that is called the Essential 5, that if we use those 5 Kagan strategies, that they allow students to participate in listening and speaking in a variety of ways. Any other feedback? If you have any teachers struggling, would you be able to plan with them this way and then they'd be able to put in their content and your content? That's the whole point of it being a scaffold. And so right here is what impact is. And so when we're looking at impact, again, we want to inquire into students' prior knowledge. Too many times teachers have made the mistakes that students who are language learners don't have prior knowledge, so they try to give them prior knowledge. No, they do. And so that's why it's very specific to ask the students something and they can talk about it. Model. Teachers give directions, but we don't model because we don't identify what mastery looks like. And so that model is very connected to that task sequence. The practice is having them practice through reading and writing, and then affirm their content learning through listening and speaking. And then at the end, connecting it to the objectives and celebrating mistakes, right? Celebrating who messed up with that. Oh, I heard you say that, and that was good because that's the first time I heard you make a mistake in English because you tried today, and clap, and really getting being able to bring down our affective filter and get the students to do it. Imagine being able to do the same lesson on Monday for 3 different content areas like language arts, social studies, and science. We might get bored, but we're not the students. Think about how it would help the students be able to access those texts and that content on their own. And so a lot of questions might come from the alignment. This is the biggest mistake new teachers make, and other teachers, is through alignment. And so when you use skill, knowledge, and strategy, the whole lesson is about questions and responses. I'm going to be able to grade the tree map, but students are going to be speaking through, and we did think, pair, share. And then these are the skills they're practicing, and really being able to hone in, right? Just like Chick-fil-A honed in on chicken. I love that they put cows out there, that as their mascot, and they're able to hone in on it. We need to be able to hone in on what is it that skills that students need to be able to do to access content and acquire English at the same time. And so all of these lesson plans, by the time they're printed, align to the SIOP model. And so when we look at the outcome, the task sequence is, what do you want students to be able to do? What are you going to model? So to be able to do that, I just did a little, somebody earlier said we need success criteria. And so this is a way to look at success criteria. When you do a tree map, you need a title, 1 question per branch. You can have up to 8 questions, and you're going to use SQP2R, which is sweepers. Now you also have a whole framework, if you click on it, that you can use for sweepers. And sweeper stands for survey, question, predict, read, respond, and summarize. If you notice up here, the students surveyed the text on their own. They wrote their questions, they made a prediction. The next is to read and respond, and then revise your prediction. Now imagine if students were doing this, right? You're doing it for them, in August, September, October. Then they're able to do it on their own. Imagine what their questions start to look like. Imagine what their reading and their writing start to look like, because they're doing the work. And I know we started late, but the next thing what I was going to have you guys do is get into smaller groups and be able to just fill out this part, and this part, because that's all you need to do when you get the lesson. And it's aligned to grade level, it's sequenced, it's aligned to the SIOP model, and it provides opportunities for students to think, write, read, listen, and speak about grade level content. And so that's the example for the impact lesson plan. And so let's go ahead and choose one of these questions. And I want you to answer it in the chat. And then we'll go ahead and answer some of these questions. Yes, thank you, Delphina. Yes, and Isabel, you have a question too? So pick a question. How can teachers ensure students access grade level? What do teachers use to ensure when using this lesson plan? And how does this system serve as a scaffold for teachers? You can come off your mic if you want to talk. And I see some of you typing. Beautiful, thank you. The system serves as a scaffold for teachers that start with the end in mind. Yes, and if we feel like it's taking us too long to get there, just putting it in here and assessing and looking at the alignment helps us really see what is it that students need and what is it that we need. If you're coaching teachers and you see their email, their task, you can see, do they know how to align the skills to the knowledge and to the strategy? Those things need to align. Yes, especially when we're looking at grade level content. Too many times we're lowering the reading level for the students who are in our programs when we should be giving them grade level reading, but shorter passages or highlighted passages or audio so that they can start making sense and building stamina for that. And it provides a framework to keep us on track and to do less. Once you do these and you start getting used to them, you're not going to have to go to the form anymore. You're going to have all of your templates that you're going to be able to pull and say, okay, this one is for main idea. I'm going to teach main idea in the same way all the time so my students can build a pattern for reading for main idea. When you have one for question and answer, I'm going to use this for this skill whenever I use it so my students can build that pattern and lower that cognitive level so that they can actually learn new information.
I was going to say, Nicole, if I may, one of the things that I really like is in teaching, I kind of forget about all of, thinking, reading, writing, assessment. Like, am I doing everything I need to do when I'm working with the students? Because there's SIAP, there's just so many things. And so I really appreciate that I wanted to add an I in there, but for your twirls, I think that helps me hone in to all learners, not just English learners, but all learners am I helping am I helping the student with their thinking? Am I helping them with their reading, their writing, and how am I getting there in the strategy? So I just want to say I really appreciate that TWRLS because it helps me put in the frame of all of the areas that the student needs to work in. And then when you broke it down even more, because you add your language and your social and your content and your objective, there's just so many other things. So you making it seem a little bit easier is appreciative for sure. I hope others saw that too, because I was like, I remember never wanting to miss work because it was so much work to do lessons.
It was, and that's the whole thing is we have to shift what we're doing in order to start making our jobs enjoyable again. We can't keep doing the same thing and adding more. And the same goes for students. If we keep focusing on language and isolation, then we are going to, keep seeing the same results. We're not getting good results. Language happens in context. That's why any of you who are bilingual, you didn't learn it at school. You learned it living somewhere. And so it happens in context. And so using this is going to give students the opportunity to develop ownership and use these strategies on their own, and also build their language learning and feel more successful. And if you look down here, when you think about it, high academic rigor and high social emotional interaction. I saw that next session is going to be on social emotional learning. We separate that too. It has to be together, especially for language learners. And those Kagan strategies really help build it in so that we do get high academic rigor and high social. And we just do listening and speaking. We're low academic, but high. And then social, so that could be like the cafeteria. Over here, they're reading and listening, low social, low academic. It might be the library where they're reading magazines. And this is where most classrooms are. right here on thinking. And so they are high academic, but low social interaction. And with knowledge at our fingertips, we want to move everyone, especially our English learners, the opportunities to participate in their own learning. And so hope you were able to use it, be able to reach into it. And I'll go ahead and change whatever I need to change so you can access that. If you weren't able to access it, just go ahead and send me, request access. I'll be sure to get to all of those and then discuss. We didn't get to the round robin, but we did do a waterfall that you were able to chat in the chat. And so with that, I want to go ahead and answer any questions and respect your time too. If any of you have a 5 o'clock deadline that you need to go ahead and go. But I will send any follow-ups that I can. I appreciate you taking your time to be here because I know everyone has a lot of things on their plates. And looking at the questions, I know Isabel asked, I said if it was for 2nd grade, yes. So the reason it's broken up is because the verbs and the strategies change. So we have a K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and high school adaption. The way that you get it is through joining our Fanita Teachers Facebook group. And that's where we're going to continue building on this because this is something that can be helpful, but it's still new, right? To really think about actually planning quickly so we can get more done. That's not like how it usually works. So I appreciate it. And it says the feedback form also needs to have access to permission. So yes, please do give your feedback and reach out and join our Fanita Teachers group if you have Facebook. And are there any questions that you might have that I might have missed?
You're going to say limosneri con garrote, but I'm going to ask this.
You can ask anything. You're my mentor.
In the world of EL, where I live, we also have to include ELP standards. And I know that your focus was on the content standard, but in my world, depending whether it's a targeted lesson or an integrated lesson, we have to either drive the instruction with an ELP standard and support it with the content or vice versa. But so my question was, is there thinking about including some of that in your template, where we filled out the information and then it just put everything down for us?
That's excellent feedback for Arizona.
Yes, that's an Arizona thing.
Arizona is our only state who does that, and I think we can do that. The other thing is with this task sequencing will help because as you can see, it's when you look at the form, they're only the, what is it called? The reading informational text standards.
Right.
And so it's, scoping and sequencing which ones are aligned to that and putting that first, and then using that for the sentence frames.
Right.
But I would love to brainstorm with you on how to do that.
Yeah, because I think that would be, I mean, like you said, it's an Arizona thing, but I think for teachers, because you don't want them to go through all this work and then someone say, "What? But you didn't address this." That's my only thing.
Right.
But
yeah.
I mean, but I love the easiness of it. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And it's aligned. One of the
Yeah.
hardest things, even if we add those things, is getting a lesson that's aligned to the standards, that's aligned to the model, to the practice. And so that is what this is first and foremost. And then once they get that done, then they'll be able to add that. And so, yes, I do think we do need to be able to do that. And I appreciate you bringing it up, and I can do one just for Arizona.
Nicole,
I'm going to be reaching out to you to check it out for me.
Hey, definitely. You know where to find me.
I do. Thank you.
And thank you, Gloria was speaking for all of us too. But Nicole, just for us to be sharing with new teachers or when we go and share this in schools or with our students, how do we give you credit, or what credits do we need to give?
Oh no, I mean, they can use it. It's free. They're all free. It's just if they want to join the Facebook group, so we can work partner, side by side, because I go into that Facebook group and we talk and answer questions like this. And then we also have so once they try it, like you'll probably get an email from me inviting you to join the Facebook group since I have your email. And it was really just something to get out to really help and first it started out for those new teachers who are shifting into education, because we have 70% of our teachers in Arizona alone that are coming into education without an education background. So I had first done this for them, but then when I added the sentence frame thing, it just connected so beautifully to the SIOP model, I was able to bring that in. So don't worry about giving me credit. I will find whoever's using it and, try to provide as much support as possible, because I really do passionately feel like we're overworking. And when we jump into online, there's too much information. And when teachers go to teachers pay teachers, we don't have alignment. We don't have grade level learning. So long story short, I'm just passionate about it, and share.
But I would say, Elma, if you're going to share anything for Dr. Teachea, it would be the twirls. She has actually taken a lot of different frameworks and put them into something that's easierly digested. And so I would give her, I would give her kudos and also for that twirls framework that she has created to put other things together. And we certainly want to acknowledge Dr. Teachea for her work, because she's brilliant and she's able to see things and systemize them.
Thank you. If they know your name, then they know how to access information. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I look forward to your honest feedback.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I just want to let everybody know, I put it in the chat that Dr. Teachea will be presenting at the AZTSOL Annual State Conference. The conference, I put the website address in the chat and you can access registration, but she will be, but Nicole, I just thought it might be a good idea, to Gloria's point, to customize the training that you will be delivering on October 21st, specifically for Arizona, because it'll all be Arizona teachers. So that might be something to consider.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You gotta say thanks, Gloria, more work. I'm just kidding.
That means I get to see you more. I'm gonna reach out because you're in the midst of it all still.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll wrap up our session. Let's give Dr. Teachea a round of applause, everyone. Thank her for this wonderful, jazz hands, wonderful session. Nicole, so grateful that you were able to join us here at AZTSOL, and we look forward to seeing you in October. And everyone, please join us in October. It's going to be a great conference. And again, Nicole, thank you so much. And we will also upload this recorded session to our PD library on our website.
Hey, and remember, the first time we try things that are new, they're not familiar. We have to try them over and over. And so if you feel like it's too much, just use the form, open it up, practice it, read through the lesson plan until you can make it become yours. It's just like phones too. We get a new phone and we don't know where the app is anymore. And so it's just practice. Our brain is about practicing over and over till we make it our own.
Okay, once again, thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.